Hey guys, Forrest Wang here. Pleased to announce I'm going to be at the Slush Motorsports Festival at Firebird Raceway, February 8th. We'll be out there giving ride-alongs in the S14. Also have our merch booth. Come by, say what's up.
Welcome back to the Slush Motorsports Podcast. As you know, my name is Phil. I am your host for the show. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. This will be the first of someone that we're interviewing in this prestigious level. So lots of good insight today that we'll get. He's a Formula drift driver and also the owner of Get Nuts Laboratory. Before we dive in and get started with this podcast, we will be dropping some more merch. So please check out our website from the link below, and we'll be releasing these. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here with us today, Forrest.
Yep, stoked to be here. I'm doing good.
Life good?
Yep.
Everything's good?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, let's just dive right into it. I know everyone's curious. Like, where does Forrest Wang come from? Like, what was your upbringing in car culture?
So I grew up on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, countryside. And it was pretty much like a lot of dirt, grass, fields all over. And we'd take junk cars, anything rear wheel drive, and slide them around, have fun with them, break them, fix them, break them, fix them once they're broke, find another one, like when it's too far gone, engine's blowing or something, go grab another one, get like $300 cars and just run them till they're dead.
$300 cars, yeah.
That don't exist anymore. But I remember getting $300 S13s that ran
$300 S13s,
300 and clean.
That's
like
crazy.
And just run it into the ground. It's such a shame. And that's where our S chassis have gone to the graveyard being we call it scrambling. So we'd scramble them, basically drift them in the mud, dirt, grass, anything that would simulate a horsepower advantage. To where a stock KA feels like 600 horsepower in wet grass, upshift thirds are easy. You just
Yeah.
And
you said Oahu?
Oahu, yeah.
Okay. How many islands is Hawaii have?
7 islands.
7 islands?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So in
there might be more, but there's smaller ones that aren't really.
Right. So is this something that everyone is doing on the island? Because I can only imagine since it's
not everyone, but it's when I tell people about drifting, I'm like, you've probably done it. And they're like, oh yeah. People that grow up in areas where it snows, they've drifted.
That's true.
You're going around a turn and it's snowing, you're probably going to drift. If not, you're going to either spin out or crash, to where it's better to be in control, slightly out of control, drifting, than to be understeering or locking up the brakes. So it's a natural joy of driving a vehicle, I feel is getting it to go sideways and trying to control that, sort of grip, sort of slip, kind of control, out of control.
What age did you start doing this?
Probably between 13, 14.
13,
I had some friends that were a little older that had some cars and kind of turned me on to it, to where I didn't have my own vehicle, but I'd be influenced in that direction, and then probably get to drive here and there, to where once I was able to get a vehicle, I knew it had to be rear wheel drive because I wanted to slide.
Who was that key influencer?
So I'd have to say it was a neighbor friend of mine. He was maybe 3 years older. His name was Kerry Walker. And then Terrence Chappelle. These guys they're in Hawaii somewhere. They're doing family stuff and all that. But
it's probably crazy for them to see what you do now.
They probably don't even pay attention. They're just doing their own thing. Family life. Is very consuming. I know firsthand. But yeah, it's coming out of Hawaii. It was really cool. It's paradise, but at the same time we had, especially back then, a lot of kind of rural areas where we could get away with, playing around
doing
a lot.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Nowadays it's probably a bit harder. Everywhere's got more populated, more stuff going on. So harder to get away with a lot of the stuff we used to, but that's kind of my beginnings of drift. And then, like I said, once I got my own car, I knew it had to be rear wheel drive, and it just so happened it was an S13 hatchback.
Yeah. Now you got I know you guys can't see, but there's an S14 over there, S14, S15.
Yeah, got a 13 in the other garage. Yeah. I definitely, I've stayed true to my S chassis roots. I mean, they're great cars, easy to set up, well balanced. They're getting harder now, to where nowadays, if you wanted to get into drifting, S chassis may not be the best choice because there's drift tax. You know, you're trying to find a clean S chassis.
That's true.
Good luck. You're gonna spend like 10 grand on a decently clean S14. As for before, like, I mean, yeah, you can get them super cheap, under $1,000, get a chassis
At
for
that
500
point, you
bucks.
might as well go like something new gen. Maybe.
Exactly. Maybe a 350Z, 370Z, E46, something a little newer.
The Mark V's has been doing pretty well drifting.
Oh yeah, right? I'm sure, but that's the money.
Yeah, that is the money. That's true. The S550's doing pretty well. Yeah. I was doing pretty good. So, but let's go ahead and backtrack. So you grew up in Hawaii, you met some friends and they introduced you into, power sliding and having fun. When did it take off for you? Like, how did you take it to the next level?
Trying to remember back. I mean, it was a while ago. So it was before like drifting was even really like a thing. Like, it wasn't mainstream. There wasn't like drifting competitions and stuff. It was just with your cars, like you getting the parts together and you're trying to like set up your suspension and you're getting more power in the engines. Then you're going to have to like stop going off road, Now it's like, okay, let's figure out where we can drive. And there was a Hawaii Raceway Park, which closed in 06, kind of like led me to like pursue drifting in the States, which, I mean, it's kind of a good thing because it pushed me to come up to the States and pursue drifting. But
so you were like really, really taking it serious
not like super serious, but like I just knew if I wanted to get further and like try to get sponsors and, do competitions, I needed to get out of Hawaii because like there was just not like a big outlet in Hawaii. There was one track and it wasn't, you're not really going to get like big sponsors in Hawaii. It's just small area and like small market. So I had to come up to the States to like really pursue and like have more options and more opportunities for different competitions in different states and stuff like that, to where, bigger events and bigger crowds, more media and stuff like that.
Right. Where'd you move to? What was the first state?
I stayed in like LA for a little while, which was very short lived because moving from Hawaii to LA is like shocking. Like I grew up in the country. I grew up in the country of Oahu, and then stayed like 3 months in LA, and I was like, this is
you didn't
nuts.
Like it?
I didn't like it at all. It was like culture shock for sure. But the first place I really like lived for a longer duration was in Arizona here, not where I live now, but down in Tempe. It was a shop called Full Race. Had a buddy.
Is it Full Race Motorsports?
Yeah, Full Race Motorsports. So they're big. They used to
because I just ordered parts from them like just recently.
Yeah, you got a Mustang?
I do have a Mustang.
Okay, I was
but I actually
say,
ordered it for the R34.
Oh, okay.
It was either, I think it was suspension.
I was going to say, because I know they're like big into the Ford, the Eco Boost.
Yeah, I am a big Mustang
the
fan,
Mustangs and the Ford trucks and stuff. They're really big into like those now. So back in the day, they were like a real big turbo exhaust manifold manufacturers.
That's what it was.
The high quality exhaust manifolds for, all the popular import engines, the Hondas, the Nissan SRs, the RBs, the 2Js, all they had really nice exhaust manifolds for all of those, high performance import cars. And that was like my first kind of like good sponsor that like really took care of me and like helped me start getting some traction in the States.
How'd you meet them? Like how'd that come?
Before I even moved up to the States, they had like come to Hawaii for like a vacation / like came to my house and helped us set up our cars for a car show. So I had another friend, Braden, and he had like somehow met Jeff Racer, the owner of Full Race, and they had a relationship, and we got introduced through him. And he came to Hawaii and like helped set up our cars, did a bunch of fab work, and like he kind of was like, you got to get it up to the States and come do some stuff up there. And then like Braden had gone up there and started his journey, and I was like, oh man, I want to try to get up there. So as soon as I came up to the States, I was kind of like my foot in the door in the industry up here, just through them, because they had already a lot of contacts and a lot of reach. So they helped me in turn get other sponsors and other, connections with like Toge Factory, Toge Factory Dave. And that led to like, Stance suspension and Origin like lab body kits.
Isn't it crazy how important like relationships are and like networking and meeting the right people?
Yeah.
Like you have to be around the right people in order to excel. Like someone should be motivating you, or you guys should be able to create opportunities together, and it opens up doors. Yeah. Which that sounds like that was pretty awesome.
That was a really big like foot in the door for me to come up, because when I first moved up, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a truck or trailer. Like I was kind of, you know, borrowing trucks and trailers, and they really helped facilitate like all that stuff. They had like, you know, a truck, a trailer, a shop, place for me to like work on cars, gave me, you know, a lot of opportunities and a lot of knowledge too. That's where I really like, I knew how to like, you know, fab and weld and stuff, but that really like honed my skills in as like a welder and fabricator, because that's what they did. That was their specialty, was like, you know, high quality TIG welding. Sense. And so that really like shed some light on like the whole fabrication side of things. And then like I said, I already had enjoyed doing that, but like getting to see it at that level was like a real eye opener. You're like, wow, like, okay. So it's
inspiring.
Yeah, it's inspiring. You basically just like, you can just soak it in. If you're around it every day, you just like talking to the guys and like looking at the machines and seeing how they're doing it. And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
And now you're doing it. I always have this one quote. It's like, if you're surrounded by 5 people who do coke every day, odds are you're going to be the next person doing coke.
Yeah.
You surround yourself by 5 fabricators every day, odds are you'll be the next one doing fabrication. Yeah. Like, that's just how it works, like what you're around. So that makes sense. That's good to hear for you. In regards to like the sponsorship side of things, has it changed over time to where, like, is the process of getting sponsors back then different than getting sponsors now?
I would definitely say so. I mean, nowadays, so much of it revolves around like social media and all that stuff. And like you said, relationships too. Like if you have a good relationship with a company or somebody that's high up in a company, like that's your kind of like way in to where like they can definitely pull some strings for you to get you taken care of. As to where like back then, I feel like the social media wasn't really as much of a thing. It was kind of like basically you were going to events and like that was it. You know, there'll be a little bit of like media coverage, but nothing like it is now. Nowadays, it's just like all media. You don't even need to go to the event and you're basically there. You know, they got live streaming. They got, you know, everything's posted up like the same day to where like you can see that stuff like immediately. Back then, you know, it was kind of like if you were there, you saw it. And if not, you know, maybe you'd look around for it on like one of the like drifting like forums or whatever, but it wasn't, you know, like it is now, to where now it's definitely like way different.
Yeah. From a shop's perspective, it's definitely easier to get promotion out there now with technology versus like back then you build those relationships and you are the key for them to get, you know, media on their side. So it's crazy how like it transitioned. Would you say it's like, it's more difficult to get sponsors now, or do you prefer the way it was back in the day, or do you like the way
I kind of like the way it was back in the day? Because you know how I am. I'm quiet. I'm not really like online, like making a bunch of posts and stuff. But it's good. You know, I get it. Like you said, for the shops, it's a lot easier to get their name out there, to get the marketing done that they need to do. Right. But yeah, you just gotta be on top of making your posts and like, you know, doing all that stuff, which I don't really like doing as much. You know. So. Yeah. Not really my style, but I try, you know.
You grew up in the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You're in your 40s?
Yeah.
Are you the oldest FD driver right now?
I don't think the oldest. I think Chris Forsberg's a touch older. Vaughn might be a little bit older.
I mean, y'all are the best. Y'all are like the best ones doing it. So,
well, thanks. Yeah, it's good to be.
So your relationships with the shops that you worked with in the past, like what's the longest standing relationship that you had? Would it be Full Race?
That was like, I think 3 years we kind of, you know, worked together. And then after I left there, I moved up to Las Vegas. I stayed in Las Vegas for about 12 years. I had started my own shop. That's when I started Getting Nuts Lab when I moved to Vegas. It was funny because it basically started out of a friend's garage. He invited me to like move up to Vegas. He had a huge pad. His name was Ben Singh. And he was like my next big, like, not even really sponsor, but like he took care of me. You know, he sponsored me a place to live for a couple of years. And like we did shop out of his house, out of his garage. He had like an RV park around the back, you know, like a big 4-car garage in the front. Yeah. And like we were doing engine swaps and all kinds of stuff out of his garage. And one day like the county officials came over.
They said,
they knocked on the door and they're like, you can't be doing this. Like you've had complaints from your neighbors and this and that. And we're like, for what? Like, well, you're working on cars. We're like, we can't work on our own cars. And they're like, well, in the state of Clark, or in the county of Clark County, you can't even change your own oil in your garage. I'm like, really?
That's wild.
Like, yeah. So like, we thought we would play it off and be like, yeah, we're working on our own cars. Yeah. Like you can't even change your oil legally in Clark County in your own garage.
Do you know what the reason is behind it? Like, why did they even say something?
I don't know. But basically they shut us down. They're like, if you keep doing this, we're going to come back and we're going to fine you. So that was the start of Get Nuts Lab. So then that was the first time that I had like to get into like my own shop, and like Ben kind of helped me.
Gotcha. Okay, so you were there, and then they were. You pretty much had a transition, and then you came up with Get Nuts. Where does the name Get Nuts come from?
It's like derived from Hawaii, like Hawaiian slang, you know, because
Yeah.
like get nuts, it's like you got to get nuts, you know,
Yeah.
like no matter what you're doing, whether you're surfing, mountain biking, skateboarding, whatever, you got to get nuts.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like,
I like
don't know.
it.
So that just kind of like, it was a funny, like I had a friend that was living with us at Ben's house, and he was from Hawaii, and like, yeah, we both thought it was a cool name. His name was Phil. So
Hey, we got the same name.
yeah, he's still around, still kicking. Yeah.
Okay. And so you started a shop. Was that in Las Vegas as well?
Yeah, Las Vegas.
Okay.
So that's where Get Nuts originated in Las Vegas after we got like warned from our county about like working on cars at the house.
Yeah.
So,
and was this the first business you ever owned? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I've always been in the car kind of scene hustle. Like I've been doing engine swaps like since I was a kid. I did my first SR swap in '99 in Hawaii. So it was the first one on the island to do a swap, and I had done probably 10 of them while I was living out there, and you know,
that's a cool bar to say. I was the first one on the island.
Yeah, first one on. I mean, 99. Like if you think about 99, it was probably only a handful of people that had done SR swaps in the States back then.
Right.
Like it was a long time ago. I mean,
now
it wasn't
like,
big. Now it's like
crazy.
yeah. I mean, we've already moved past SR swaps. People want to do, you know, the Jay-Z swaps big, the LS swaps big, you know, but like back then, like that was the easiest, most attainable like swap. You know, it was pretty simple, bolt in, just SR swap, and you had double the power that you had with the KA pretty much, you know. You got decent amount of power, enough to keep the tires spinning, and you know, good opportunity for advancement and like the drift. Obviously you need some power to drift, and yeah, definitely got
so
me.
with Get Nuts, how was that journey? Like how was it starting?
Very slow. Like
slow?
Nothing happened overnight, you know. It was just mainly just a bunch of friends, you know, playing with cars, going to events, like just living, you know, just having a good time. It was never really like what some people might think of like it as, like a shop. It was never really like that. It was more just like, you know, a bunch of friends working on their cars, and like, you know, we'd do a few friends' cars here and there, and then yeah, just eventually it started getting to the point where it was bigger, and we were doing bigger builds and more things, but you know, it always just started as like a hobby.
So do you think, like, what's your opinion on, do you think people work together more now or less? Because when I think of like car culture back in the day, you almost had to be in person and work together because you didn't have social media. Everything was on the forums,
Right.
Or you go to car meets, and that's how like you get new information about builds or how to do something. So I feel like it was more of a collective, like you had to be there, had to work with each other. But like you said, like with media, you could do everything from sitting at home.
It's changed a lot nowadays for sure. I mean, there's so much knowledge just floating around that you can just like go on YouTube, look it up. They can teach you how to do almost anything, you know, to where like before there wasn't like how-tos on everything that you could ever wonder about. It was like firsthand experience, you know, maybe a friend had done it, or like, you know, you just trial and error. You're like, oh, I'm going to try to do this, you know, like figure it out. Yeah. I didn't know what the heck I was doing on my first swap. I was like, it took me like a month to do. And then it's like, by the time you get it down, you're like, you can do this in a day. You do these swaps in a day.
It's really crazy to think about, because it reminds me what we spoke about earlier with like kids, right? They do everything online now. They play games, all that. But when we were growing up, well, a year older than I was, for sure.
We didn't have internet. We were outside
more.
Outside.
Things were more
Call
meaningful.
your friend on the landline. You know, you do
the like, yo, pull up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother
it's
era.
way different now. Yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely it's cool, but then at the same time, it's like I kind of like feel bad for some of the kids like growing up in this generation, just if they get stuck in that, like, you know, you're just glued to a screen all the time. You like lose touch with like the world. You know, like, because I feel like your connection with nature and like being outdoors is like huge. Like kids need to be outdoors. They need that, you know, to where like if you're always indoors and you're always like going online playing video games, you're missing out on like so much. Yeah.
So much. Yeah. But then you have the opposite effect where I learned how to start drifting on a sim racer from, because Dan, I remember I went to a shop a long time ago and they had the sim rig in there. I was like, what the heck? This is crazy. Like, I want one of these. He's like, oh, bro, you can learn how to drift on this. I was like, there's no way.
So I can't sim.
Oh,
I mean, I've never
sim?
spent enough time on it to actually like learn. I've spent 3 minutes here and 3 minutes there and like spun out a bunch of times, got frustrated and like, this doesn't feel.
That's it, yeah.
But like, I get it because like the muscle memory, the actual motions, they're very similar. I mean, it's the same thing to where I think if you don't drift and you sim, it's going to transition you into drifting like that. Yeah. Because you're going, I've done
that for me.
I've done this. Yeah. I've already known how to do this. For me, growing up as a kid, playing with cars my whole life, I'm used to the feel. I'm a feel like G, like you feel like the way the G is moving, and that will like in turn give you your feedback as to where like when I get on a sim, I just feel like I'm doing what I should be. Not even the excitement. I just feel like I don't get the feedback and I can't tell what the car's doing. And maybe that's just like, I need to do it more, but like, I just don't really have the desire to do it. So like, I'm just like, oh, okay. Like sim's not for me. Yeah. But as a new enthusiast coming up, I've seen it. Like I've seen people sim and then get in a drift car and they're killing it like that, to where like the muscle memory and like the motions, you're going through the same motions. When you get in a car, it's probably most easier because you're like, oh, I've done this 1,000 times. I know what to do. Foop, 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 do this, do that. And like you do it as to where like, if you've never simmed, then you've never drifted, your learning experience is going to take you way longer because you're going to have to go through all the spinning out in real life, which is going to take you way longer than spinning out a bunch of times on the sim before you get it. And then you're like, okay, now I got it.
And it costs way less money.
So nowadays definitely would be great to get in the sim and then drift. But for me, like I can't see myself ever doing it.
Hopping on the sim?
I struggle with it big time.
Well, would you consider yourself an
OG? Yeah.
Yeah, so you're like the OG style. But that's gangster. I like that. Like that's dope. That says a lot. Huh? Yeah, how has drifting changed?
I mean, drifting's changed a ton since, early days. I mean, what was it like Formula Drift first seasons? Like those guys with stock SRs and like there was an El Camino out there, didn't even have harnesses. Like it's changed a lot, Even when I first came to the States in 2006, you could still be able to go and compete with like 200 horsepower. I mean, and nowadays you go out to like any Pro-Am competition, you got guys out there with like FD level cars. You go to Hot Pit or any of these like, Pro-Am licensing events, and like you got serious cars out there. They're basically like pro cars. You got, big power, dog boxes, quick changes, they got teams, they got radio communication. They're like set up like a pro team already, and they're just doing amateur stuff, which back when I was doing amateur stuff in like 2006, it was nothing like that. I go out there with like 4 or 6 tires and just like, they were mixed match. I had a couple Falcons, I had a couple Federals, I'm just like doing whatever. Like, oh, I can make it through this event on these tires. Nowadays everyone's got, everything lined up, 12, 14 rears, all mounted, ready to go.
People
all
drifting wagons,
matching.
all types of things.
Nowadays it's definitely like the level and that level, that talent, it's huge.
You can almost skip the line. If you got the money for it, you can skip the line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see it all the time. You see these young kids coming up, and it's like, it's awesome that it's available, like that you can get that technology, you can get that support, you can go and do that at such a young age. I mean, what was that kid Hiroya this year come out to FD and like be whooping butt, and he's like 14. I was like,
it's
wow,
crazy, right?
You're gonna go up against this kid, 14. He's driving a 1,300 horsepower freaking machine. It's just he's just a weapon behind the wheel, and it's like insane to see like.
You think we'll see more and more of that? Because it's kind of like Formula One, NASCAR.
Right.
Like
you gotta start young. I mean, when you're young, you're just like a sponge. You just soak it in. You're just like, oh yeah, I can do that, and you don't have fear. Little kids don't. They're not afraid. It's not his car. You don't even care.
That's true.
I'm not worried about this bumper or this, that, or whatever. Like for somebody that like builds and maintains their own cars, I'm conscious of like damaging my car. Like obviously, like I'm not that worried about it, but at the same time, it's money. Like I got a small program that like kind of like if it happens, then it's like, oh, that's straight out of your like pocket.
That's straight out of your pocket. Yeah.
Mess up your car. You're like, oh well, that sucks. I gotta spend a bunch of money that I didn't want to spend.
Speaking of which, like, how much does it cost to be an FD driver for one season?
I'm like one of the like really low end like budgets because we do it like, for the love. Like most of my team, they're just out there doing it for the love. Like I've had a few seasons where I've had like not even a big budget, but like a better budget than I've had in most of my years,
Mm-hmm.
where like for the most part, like the team wasn't really like making money. They're not getting paid. They're just doing it for the love. Like we would take care of their logistics, the flights and the accommodations and stuff. But like we didn't really have like a big budget to like pay people. Like just it wasn't going to happen. So,
Right.
we're just looking for all the help we can get. And, you kind of like get what you pay for too. Like people are more motivated when they're getting paid. And I understand that. And like, if I had the budget, I would have liked to pay my crew like what they're worth, because everybody's putting in work. It ain't easy. You're traveling, you're going to these events and you're like busting your ass. Sometimes these events are uncomfortable. You go to Florida, you go to Atlanta, hot Atlanta, man, it's hot and humid and you're sweating. You're out there in pants and, you're working. So we're like, I get it. I mean, props to like all the crew members, because, it definitely like it's work, you're out there and you're hustling.
Yeah. You think it's like in the 6-figure range you spend per year on FD?
So that's like what most people would, like I'd say every team's like in the 6-figure range for sure. We would do it for probably less every year, just because like I would drive my own rig. We would kind of like get Airbnbs to like get everyone in the same house, a lot cheaper than hotels. Because if you got a team and then you're putting everyone in hotel rooms, like it's way more expensive than getting an Airbnb for like $300 a night.
Right, it is.
Where,
surprisingly,
like, hotel rooms are like $200 a night.
Yeah, you get an Airbnb,
and if you get like 3 or 4 of them, yeah, you can get an Airbnb for a decent one for like $300 a night. To where like we'd usually do that. I'd bring my Honda in the rig. That way we'd have a car anywhere we get somewhere. We'd have a car to get around.
Yeah.
Less rentals. We'd probably still have to get one rental to get the crew around and stuff. But if we could do without it, we'd do without it. Just trying to like keep it as budget as possible. Yeah.
Do you, like, no name specific, but do you have insight on what someone spends like the most on FD?
What team spends the most? Or
yeah, you don't have to say their name specifically, but like what's like the highest budget that you've seen someone spend in FD?
I don't know for sure, honestly, but I know it's up in the
You think it could touch $1 million?
No, I don't think we're at that level, but I'm sure the RTR team's up in the 600-700 range.
Yeah.
I've heard of different rides costing like quite a bit of money. If you want to be on Odie's team or RTR, like it could cost you quite a bit of money to.
Okay, yeah. So give me more insight on that.
For somebody.
So when, let's say like I want to join FD, I'm a good enough driver and whatnot. To be on a team, you have to pay to be involved on the team?
Not always. I mean, like if you're Frederick Osbo, like you're obviously the talent, you're getting paid. But as a driver that's like trying to like climb the ranks and like get recognized, then like you'd probably have to like pay to drive their car.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because like if you look at it from a perspective of someone who doesn't know anything about FD, but we know you're a professional driver, you could look at it like the NBA or the NFL, like, oh, they're getting paid like a lot, or like the organization is paying. So with FD, is the only compensation from winning races? Like, is there other ways of compensation?
Yeah, there's like a big misconception with like people thinking that like because you're racing FD, you're making money. Like most of the drivers probably not making money. There's probably less than half that are making like money racing. It's a tough sport, and everybody wants to do it. You have so much competition that like, if you don't do it, the next person's going to want to do it. Like I feel like that's kind of how FD like sees their drivers, that like, oh, like if he doesn't drift, we'll get the next guy to drift. Yeah. And I'm sure they will, I mean, drifting's not that hard. Like obviously like to be the best, it's hard. And it takes a lot of refinement of skills and like tandem. You're never going to like master tandem. Like you can always get better at tandem. I mean, even like the James Deans and them, like he can always still get better at tandem, even though he's like amazing and like glued to your door. There's that variable that like you could always just do a little bit better. And that's what's cool about drifting too. You can always push to be better,
Yeah.
There's no like cap to be like, that's it. I've just learned everything I need to learn. Like you can always do something better. You can always get better.
That makes sense.
It is a really cool sport in that aspect, that like there's variables and it's just challenging. It's definitely challenging.
Do you think FD will ever be in a position where it can pay the drivers to be there?
I wish. I don't think FD wants to ever pay their drivers to be there.
Which
feel
is,
like it's a traveling circus that pays their own way. And they give you the stage. They say, oh, you have the stage to show your skills and, you know, promote your sponsors. And I get that. Yeah, sure. But like at the same time, they're making a lot of money, like selling out these venues at like, I don't know, $60 a head nowadays. Like I remember back in the day, it was like $20 to get into an event. Now it's like $60, $70 to get into the event for the weekend. And you're like, wow. I mean, I get it. It's a show and it's exciting, but it's a decent amount of money for what you're getting. You know, especially at some of these venues that are like not the greatest. I mean, we had like, you know, Wall, New Jersey and OSW. And I mean, these are like demolition derby tracks.
Oh, wow.
This is where they do like crazy eights and like they crash RVs through each other at these tracks. These aren't like world-class like facilities where, you know, they hold real racing events. These are like, you know.
Right. So did you like Irwindale? Because Irwindale's kind of
same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was the nicest demolition derby track that would run. But yeah, basically it's the same thing. Like they don't really use these tracks, and RIP to Irwindale that they're going to be like demoing that thing next year.
Yeah.
They've been talking about that for like 10 years. Like this is the last Irwindale.
So many tracks do that actually.
So many tracks.
Like
it's
a scary
sad.
thing.
Tracks are just getting shut down left and right.
Yeah.
Dude, it's terrible. Like there's less and less racetracks and not too many people building new ones.
Yeah.
You know, all the old school racetracks getting
I was thinking like
tore down.
If we become more futuristic, eventually everyone's going to own their own racetracks in their backyard.
I mean, I think that's the ones that you do see getting built. You're like, oh, this like private party. They're building their own racetrack, like that Drift Mansion place. I've never been, but it looks awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like,
which would be good because it puts like everything in our hands.
They have the control.
You know?
Yeah. You're not under, you know, waiting for like a venue to like, oh yeah, you can like come use it. It's like, hey, here it is.
Yeah.
You want to use it? Let's go.
Yeah. Well, let's say FD were to eventually pay their drivers. Do you think that would change the sport tremendously? Would it make it more competitive? Like, would you see any changes? Like, would it motivate you to like go out there and like?
I could never see them paying their drivers, and even if they did, like, I wouldn't see it being like substantial enough to like make money, like through that alone. Like, you got to have your sponsor endorsements, and you know, like you're not really winning money like through winnings, like not to go race. Like obviously you got to have your program there before you win anything. And that's going to cost you a lot of money. You can't bank on like, okay, like I'm gonna put this program together and then I'm gonna make it all back through winnings. Like that really isn't like, that's not the business model. Like you gotta like already know like, okay, this is going to cost a lot of money to like get rolling. And then hopefully we'll get some sponsors, but like, I don't know, like at what point, you know, you start being profitable and then what point you make your investment back, because pretty much everybody that's got into drifting had to spend a bunch of money to get into drifting. And some people may never make their investment back. Some people may make it back quickly because they get in with the right people. Like we said earlier in this conversation, like who you know and who you network with, they can basically like get you fast tracked onto the right team, onto the right gear, onto the, you know, tires are huge. If you're in with somebody that's getting you free tires right off the bat, you're going to be able to drive way more than the guy that's spending $150 a tire. Right. Because those guys are like, oh, I can't drift next weekend because it's going to cost me another $1,000 in tires. And I don't feel like spending that.
Right.
You know, or they can't afford that. To where the guys that's getting free tires right off the bat, they have the ability to drive way more than the guys that are having to buy tires. Yeah. And with this sport, like the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So like you got to drive all the time, and driving all the time costs a lot of money. So like, it's like, you want to get good, you got to drive. You want to drive, it's going to cost money.
It's going to cost money. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And what I find interesting is like, I think Formula Drift is more entertaining to watch than NASCAR and honestly Formula One.
It is a super exciting sport to watch.
Maybe like it's kind of hard because like the audience that watches it, if they knew about drift, like I feel like not enough people know about FD, and if they did, maybe it would be bigger than NASCAR and Formula One. But
it is such an exciting
but they got
sport
so much
for
money.
Spectators to watch.
Yeah,
like you know, it's
the
wall
big
to wall excitement.
Point,
it's wall to wall excitement. You know, it's just it always looks like we're gonna crash. I'll be at Irwindale and I'll be like watching, and even as a driver, I see the guys come into the infield wall, and it looks like they're gonna crash.
Yeah,
I mean, like as I do the same thing. And I'm like, it's impactful. Like I always tell people, like if you've never been to an event live, like go check one out.
Definitely go check one out. Yeah,
online videos, it never does its justice. Like you go there in real life, you can feel the power, you can feel the intensity of the speed and the horsepower and the traction and how much power these cars are putting down to the ground. Like I talk to people about drift sometimes. Like, oh yeah, so like, what kind of tires do you use? You must have like some real hard tires to keep the rear end spinning. I'm like, actually, it's the opposite. We run like the softest tires we can like legally run.
Yeah.
Because we want traction. When you got 1,000 horsepower, you want as much traction as you can get to try to put that power to the
1,000
ground.
horsepower going sideways. Too.
Yeah.
What's the fastest entry you ever done?
Like 125.
125 mile per hour entry?
Yeah, not an FD. The FD never had anything that fast. I know Texas, the old layout, like 2014, when they used to run the high-speed entry, I heard Daigo Saito was clocking like 115.
Do you like doing the high-speed entry?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, would you consider that dangerous?
Right. The more speed you have, the more inherent dangers are going to be there to where like, but
would you push it past the limit you've already gone?
Yeah, definitely. All in the right circumstances.
Yeah.
Obviously, like the surroundings kind of have to like be able to accommodate that kind of speed without there being like super sketchy, runoffs where like that kind of speed, if you do hit a wall, like that's where, the dangers come. Like,
that's fast.
Yeah, people always say like, oh, like drifting, like it's got to be dangerous. I'm like, most of the stuff that we're doing isn't that dangerous.
That's what when people who know nothing about drifting, when I educate them on it, I'm like, do you know how many people die drifting? Not like a lot of people, like none.
Well, in like actual like real pro
sure
events,
it happened. Yeah,
like on the street, it probably happens.
Yeah,
but like
real
at pro events, like I don't think people have died drifting.
People haven't died.
No. It's not that dangerous. There's a couple of tracks here and there where there's like some kind of dangers. Like Seattle's weird. Like it's pretty high speed entry, and you're going into the bank and you kind of like do a little flick in, and they have like this tractor tire there.
Right.
And if say you went to flick in and you broke a tie rod and you hit that tractor tire at 80 miles an hour,
that's a crazy situation.
That would be pretty crazy because they do have like there's a hole in the wall. And they basically use that as like an entry and exit point when they're doing their circle track stuff.
Yeah.
But for us, the way we use the track, it'd be a leading edge. So they put a bunch of tires there as like a buffer. Because if you hit a concrete wall and it's leading edge, like done.
Yeah.
But like at least if you had a tire, it'll kind of like, blow, bend and like deflect some of the energy to where like, but still, like I could imagine like a suspension failure and hitting that like head on would be super gnarly at 80 miles an hour. And that's like one of our faster tracks in the circuit.
And you being a fabricator, like, knowing how much like putting a roll cage in your car can make a huge difference. Like I watch videos where people are rally driving, doing off-road stuff, and they'll roll down the hill. Oh yeah. And they're just sitting there chilling in the car, like boom, boom.
Yeah, the safety equipment's
it's like what?
It's pretty thorough. We use
they don't want to put that in cars though, like regular cars.
No. We have the Hans device, we have the Halo seats with the side head bolsters, and it's definitely pretty safe. 5-6 point harnesses, like you said, the roll cage all the way around you. You got the intrusion bars coming down by your feet, because I know in the past, like you hit a wall and say your front tire like pushes into your firewall, it can like collapse into the chassis. And I think one of the drivers broke a leg at Seattle because his foot got like pinched and it like pushed back. So then they implemented those like intrusion bars to where your wheel can't like come into the firewall like it used to be able to.
Have you ever been in any scary scenarios?
Nothing too bad, honestly. I've had a few crashes here and there, but nothing like I didn't, walk away from that was like, oh, okay, you brush it off. It wasn't nothing too bad. But yeah, I mean, I've like sprained my wrist where like I crashed and like wheel like ripped out of my hand and like wrist was sore for like 3 weeks or something. I'm like, damn, that was pretty close. It could have broke. Yeah, you could have broke. Like, yeah, there's a certain point where like you just let go. You have to. But like I tried to hold on to it. I was hitting the wall. I was like, once you're like into especially those bank tracks, say like at Irwindale or like Seattle, like you hit the wall, all that inertia is going to keep you in the wall.
Right.
And once you're in the wall and you're like riding off of it, you're not really pulling yourself off that. It's like at that point, you just ride out the momentum and try to like slow down as quick as you can. But you're not going to like drive off the wall once you like slap, they call it. You hit the rear and then the front hits and it pulls you in. Like those bank courses, they'll get you for sure.
Yeah, no, they definitely will. Like,
I saw like a hot pit. The last one, Kyle Mohan like had a hit there and it was pretty bad. And he had to like, they had all the safety crew. They were talking about like cutting his car and like getting him out with the jaws of life and shit. Cause I don't think it like crushed on him, but like his car's really hard to get in and out. And yeah, I don't know. I wasn't there, but I heard some stories after. And I was like, eesh, those bank tracks, they can get you. Those bank tracks can like really bite you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. What would you say is your highlight. What is your favorite highlight moment that you had in FD?
FD highlight, like my first podium's always gonna like be memorable just because like it's your first time podium.
Right.
It was Irwindale 2013. It was my first season like running my own program for a full season. I had like a couple years where I had like tried to come in, and then I drove for Drift Emporium in 2010, and then that was a pretty big hit. I crashed that car in Vegas in 2010, and never got back out because they didn't have the budget to like fix the car and whatnot, and missed the rest of the season. But yeah, my first year running my own like full season campaign. Yeah, the final round I got podium at Irwindale, and I had to go up against like a bunch of drivers on the way there. I think it was like Vaughn Gittin, Matt Field, Mike Essa.
Yeah, that's huge.
We came through like
I met Mike Essa. Yeah, he's
some really good drivers to make it to the podium, and we battled Robin Nishida for the consolation battle for third, because that was when they used to do the the battle for third,
right?
Which was like I missed the third place battle. Like it's like a finals, but like for third place.
Right,
You get some really good action, and nowadays it's just like based off of like qualifying order, which is already predetermined from the event before, to where it's like I really feel like third place battles.
Okay.
Because they started doing it off of qualifying, which like I don't really feel like you should take a trophy for just qualifying higher than the next guy that was in the semifinals.
Right.
And then now, like with them changing, we don't even qualify event to event. Now it's like you're pre-qualified from the weekend or the race prior.
Right.
So whatever your finishes were from the event before, that's where your qualification lays, and that's what's going to get you maybe the third place in the next round versus the other guy in the semifinals.
Can you give us some insight on how FD judging works? Like, what do they look at? How do they judge? Like, what is that world like?
So what is it? I don't even know. I don't pay attention to this stuff. I always thought it was like speed angle style, but then they took speed out, and then it was like impact or like what was it? X factor. They're like, I don't know. Honestly,
I think it's hard for like a normal spectator to understand as
well.
well.
I mean, obviously like fluidity is like super important. Like you want to be smooth, you want to be fluid in your drifts. You can't be like chopping it up, like doing a lot of corrections, a lot of handbrakes. You want to be kind of like flowing through the course smoothly. And then a lot of it came down to like tandem. Once you come to battle, like you have to be able to keep up with the other car. And that's where drifting's gotten like so competitive, because the cars are so fast. There's so much power and there's so much grip, where everyone's almost like in a race. You're not really racing, but you're kind of racing. Like you got to be fast, to where like everyone's got their cars really gripped up. And that's where drifting's kind of changed in the last like 4 or 5 years, as you see these cars getting more and more and more gripped up, that they're getting like harder to drive, and you're losing some of like the style of like the sport. You don't float out. You're not able to like do as smooth and wild of like transitions, and you're not able to throw as much angle, because like the cars are so gripped up, they don't want to drive in big angle, where like you're just beelining it at like a relatively like shallow angle compared to in the past, where you were able to like, get 45, 50 degrees angle or more and like sustain that. Nowadays, a lot of it's like shallower angle with more speed, and it's respectable. It's super cool to watch. It's badass in its own sense. It's just a little different than the traditional style of drifting that, we like came up watching 15, 20 years ago from Japan. It's definitely, America's evolved the sport of drifting, as to now it's like Formula NASCAR. Everyone's got power and big grip. And like I said, it's still super cool and like it's exciting. It's just, I feel like some of the other series in different countries, they're still like FD kind of like was maybe 5-6 years ago, where it was a little less gripped up, a little bit smaller of a tire. Like the tire sizes nowadays are getting like really big, like Mustang size tires, and like, these guys are running like 295
and all that.
Mostly everyone's on 295 40s, which is like a pretty tall tire. And then like, I mean, the Nitto guys, I think they're on like a 315 40. It's like a massive tire. Like I feel like if there was a cap on tires, like how some of the European series have like either 275s or 285s, it would kind of limit like the amount of like traction that you're able to put down. And then that would in turn limit the amount of horsepower you have to where running 1,000 horsepower car gets expensive. I mean, you're breaking parts, you're going through engines, you're wearing out clutches, like everything wears out quicker the more grip and more power you have to make to keep those tires spinning. So if they put a cap on it, I feel like you would see drifting kind of go a little bit more back to like
more skillful.
Not it's still skillful now. It just would change like how the cars react, how the cars slide. And I think you would get more consistent driving with better tandems. Because now the cars are getting harder to drive because there's less room for error. You're like fully committed, balls to the wall. Like if you let off of this thing, it's going to bite you. Like I feel like before you were able to kind of play with the car a little, put the car right where you want it because you had a little bit of room to like breathe off the throttle and like let the car slide, as to where now the cars don't like to come off throttle. They want to be full throttle all the time. You know, they're so gripped up. It's hard to let the car slide.
So if you're the lead in a competition, what is a strategy that you would use going into that round?
Well, there's not really like I feel like as a strategy, like I'm not one of those drivers that's trying to like win by a strategy. Like you just want to go out and do the best lead run that you can, and that's hit all the zones, fluid through the course. No, not like I said, chopping it up, not doing a bunch of corrections. Basically, just set the angle and go. Like people really like tandeming with me because like I will set an angle and kind of like ride that angle to where it's not like a whole bunch of like corrections, and it opens the door. When somebody's got like a good angle and it's consistent, you can see that their counter steer is consistent. It's easier to follow than somebody that might be like fighting the grip or like kind of chopping in and out of angle.
So would you rather lead? You rather be a lead than a follow?
It doesn't matter. Like,
is there a strategy to following?
Just be as close as you can.
Be as close as you can.
Yeah.
So that's the goal.
There's so much strategy to following. Definitely, like I said earlier, like the follow, you always learn things when you're driving and you're chasing. Like you always can push to get a little bit closer. You can always push to be, duration of proximity, because you can get close, but then if you like back off, then that's not as ideal as if you're just locked on and close and close and close. Right. And then when you transition, you have to like time it to where you back off a little and then jump back in, and like there's always room for improvements on that. No matter how good you do it, you can always do it a little better. I mean, some of the stuff that like James and like Connor Shanahan came out this year and was like an amazing chase driver, and like some of the stuff that they do, it's just like incredible how long the duration of their proximity is close to where like you transition, you give them just enough space to like graze their back bumper, and then you're like locked back in, and that's where you're always just going to be able to like keep challenging yourself to do it even better. But like you can never do it the same two times. Like there's that variable of a lead car and then a chase car, and you not knowing exactly what the lead car is going to do, to where you're always changing your technique and you're changing like what you're doing based on what the lead car is doing, which keeps it interesting, like.
Have you ever been in a position where like, since you're following and you crash into who you're following, like, do you feel bad? Like, are the drivers mad at each other? Like, what's that environment?
So in battles, like, I mean, you're pushing hard, like to where if something happens in competition, it is kind of what it is in competition. But it's like, the thing that bothers me is like in practice, like if you're crashing into me in practice, like it's kind of irritating, like it's practice. You ain't going to win practice. I get you're trying to like tune in and you're trying to like push, but at the same time, like, hey, because everyone's on their own, like I crash into you, I got to fix my car, you got to fix your car. And like some of these guys, like they're just drivers or they're paying for a ride.
Do they ever walk up to you like, you owe me?
No, nobody like really says you owe, because everyone knows like you're drifting and like, hey, you're on your own. Like you're fixing your own car. Like nobody's responsible for your car. Like they're not like drift insurance.
Yeah, not true.
So like,
do you think it's different like grassroots wise? Like,
no, it's the same. You're out on the track. You're out on the track.
Okay.
I mean, if somebody was like gracious, I've had people tell me like, oh, I'll pay for it. I'm like, dude, it's drifting. Like, don't worry about it. Like something happens, it happens.
You've seen people's cars get totaled from someone else?
It gets real. Yeah. It gets real. And like, it is what it is. Like you sign up for it. You go out on the drift track. Like these cars don't really have a long life expectancy. Like I'm lucky enough that I have some of my cars. Like I've had this car since like 2008. Yeah. So this car's been through a lot. I've like seen this car, I've rented this car out and it's got crashed pretty bad a couple of times.
Right.
I've gotten pretty bad crashes in it. And when I built it, I probably never expected it to last this long. Like it's kind of like on its last leg, you know. I mean, it's definitely
Keep it going.
Yeah, you know, exactly. It's a drift car.
Yeah.
Like it still works great. Like I still enjoy drifting it, but it's been through the ringer for sure.
And the S15 is your main comp car.
Yeah, that's the main comp car. So that one hasn't seen the amount of action that this one's seen. This one's definitely been through a lot more action.
Are you able to spill the beans on what you like do to your S15?
What do you mean?
Like your setup?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. What's your setup for the S15?
It's Toyota 2JZ engine. It's got a Samsonite sequential gearbox behind it. Winter's quick change. We use drive shaft shop axles and carbon drive shaft. It's got a daily engineering dry sump on it. Let's see. We run a precision turbo 6870 next gen. Future fabrication exhaust manifold. What else we got on there? It's Haltech 2500 Elite.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
Got all the Wisefab
900
angle
horsepower?
kit. Yeah, about 950, right below the 1,000 horsepower mark. If it was wheel, it would be over 1,000 because these things, you know, they got a bit of driveline loss with like the quick change and everything. They soak up an extra little bit of power.
So why Jay-Z?
I love the turbo power plants. Like it doesn't even matter if it's Jay-Z. Like if you got turbo, like turbo rotary, turbo SR, turbo, you know, 2AR, whatever. Like I just love turbo noises. You know, you're just ripping air. You know, it just sounds super cool. You got all kinds of wastegate noises and, you know, surge noises. Turbo sounds just really cool.
Have you ever owned a muscle car?
I haven't.
You don't want one?
Nah, not really. Not really. I mean, the V8s are kind of growing on me. I've driven a couple and I'm like, they're so much easier to drive just because you have that like
that
torque
right there,
on demand. Like you want it, you got it. Sometimes with the turbo car, you floor it and you're like, come on.
Yeah,
like
that lag.
That lag. You're getting the clutch, slipping the clutch, you know, like they're not as responsive. But something about turbo cars and drifting, they just work because like you really don't need the power right out of the hole. You kind of like got to ramp it up anyways to where like, as long as you're driving it, like gives you the turbo cars give you the ability to stay floored longer.
That makes sense,
because you're having to floor it off the line and you're having to ramp up that RPM and like really work the clutch. You're flooring it longer than whereas like some of these LS cars, like a clutch kick isn't really a thing. You floor it. That's your clutch kick. Yeah. You don't need to clutch kick it. Like I drove Matt Field's vet at Fuel Fest last year and it was like mind blowing on like how much power there was. If you floored it, you're spinning the tires. So you don't really even have to floor it off the line. If you floor it off the line, you're blowing the traction out and then you're going slower than if you're like feathering back. So you got to feather it. And then when you want to initiate, you just like punch the gas and the car just goes boom.
What's Matt Field's setup? Is he straight NA or is he supercharged?
No, supercharged, nitrous. I don't know the exact setup.
He runs nitrous on it too.
It's a lot of power.
Wow.
A lot more power than I was used to. But it makes it, like I said, like you got that power on tap. You know, if you want wheel speed, you got wheel speed. That's to where like with a turbo car, if you're falling out of boost and you want more, you're like having to kick the clutch, slip the clutch, get the RPM back up to where there's always like a little more waiting for like the turbo. And maybe it's not waiting, but just like anticipating like, okay, I know the car's going to like do this here. So I'm going to be ready for it. You'd be on the gas with the clutch in, waiting, and then, you know, be ready to hit it. As to where with the LS, you can kind of be like, there it is. Like you fall back on that and you know, like that power is going to be there.
Yeah.
Which is, it's nice. But the turbo cars definitely sound cooler.
Yeah. I love the sound of turbos. Like I have a Shelby GT500, but I always miss having a turbo because it's just like a completely different experience.
Right.
It's one of my favorite experiences by far. For someone who wants to get into FD, what would you tell them? Someone who's dreaming to become an FD driver, like what is the life like? Like, what would you tell them? Should they do it?
I always say, like, keep it fun. If it happens, it happens, you know, like keep it. If you can afford to do it, by all means do it, but it's not for everyone nowadays. Like competing at that level is going to cost you quite a bit of money to get there. Like you got to go through pro-am events, get your license. That may take a while depending on like how much skill you have, how many connections you have, like, what you're spending on, your events, like how much it costs. I mean, like I said, you want to go to events and you want to drive all the time, it's going to cost money. Like some of these events, you got to travel to go get to them. That's going to cost you money, logistics. And nowadays, like I said, to compete at a level, even in the pro-am, you got to have a team, you got to have a rig, you got to have, a bunch of stuff to like compete at that level. So I always said like, keep it light, keep it fun, basically, but if it works, it works. If you get the right connections, like a lot of it's connections, you meet the right people, you network, you get, start getting free parts or getting, monetary sponsors. Hey, more power to you. If you can make it work, then make it. But I wouldn't, I would say, depending on what your situation is, like do not like sacrifice everything to do it, because like it's tough to bank on. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to like give up your quality of life, especially if you have a family and stuff. Like if you got a wife and kids, like it may not be in your best interest to like throw everything at drifting. If you're a kid and your parents are going to like help support it, or if you got some sponsors that are going to like put you in a car, like great, like definitely go after it. But like if you're just doing it recreationally, like just keep it fun, keep it light, like go out there and have fun with it. That's why we all started drifting, because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And if you're not having fun, then like don't do it. So definitely.
How much longer do you see yourself in FD?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. I've kind of got to a point now where like with family and everything, like I just don't enjoy it as much as I used to. I love drifting. Like I still enjoy going to drift events. FD, like I feel like takes a lot of the fun out of drifting because you're not driving that much. Like any weekend, you'd probably be driving for like 30 laps. If the laps are 30 seconds a lap, you're driving for 15 minutes accumulative. Like that's not a lot of seat time for a month of preparation or driving across the country.
Yeah.
But like I do enjoy going to like a Grid Life or a Fuel Fest or like a Hyperfest where you got lots and lots of opportunity for seat time. Lots of tandem trains, lots of ride-alongs.
That's why I want you to come to the Slush Festival.
I love taking people on ride-alongs, especially when it's their first ride. I'm like, have you ever been on a drift ride? And they're like, no, first one. You're like, oh wow, well this is going to be amazing, because like you just like gave them an experience that like they've never felt before. A lot of people like think that it's going to be super rough or bumpy or very like violent, and these cars, they like slide pretty.
It's like being on a roller coaster on the ground.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
but you're controlling it, to where like, it's really cool that like you can like give some of that experience. And like, I have a lot of guys get out. That was so worth it. That was like the best time I've ever had. I just did Fuel Fest a week ago, and it was like, we did like 40 something rides. I had people just like, this was so amazing. I'm so glad I went on a ride. I had guys do like 3. They bought 3 ride-alongs. They go and then come back later. I got to go for another ride.
It's like, life-changing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I got.
I feel bad too. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, did I just set this guy up? Like he's going to go buy a drift car now.
You definitely
buy a drift car now.
You definitely did. Because Dan Stukes set me up. Like, the moment I sat
took you for a ride and you're like,
took me a ride, it was over with.
Something like clicks and you're like, I want to do that. Like, it's a lot of fun.
That leads to inspiration behind Slush Motorsports Festival, because in order for me to enjoy drag racing or road racing or time attack, it always took one person to give me that experience, and then I was hooked. Yeah. And then I noticed like, oh, all these segments within car culture is separated, when if someone really introduces you, you probably would like all of it. Like I'm sure I never done off-roading or
I love motorsports, all kinds. I like dirt biking, off-road stuff. Like it's all great, motors and, speed. It's just like, what's not to like about it? It's like, it doesn't matter what kind of motorsport it is. It's all awesome, and like you said, if you get that right influence, somebody pull you along and you're like, hey, check this out. It's like hard not to like.
Yeah.
Like,
and you're growing the sport. You're growing the sport.
Right.
We need to keep going.
Yeah.
Outside of like the track stuff, how do you feel about the grassroots community? How do you feel about car culture and where it's headed, and your experience in the past versus now?
I feel like a little scared for like what the car culture is doing now with like these whole like takeover things and like people just reckless, endangering like a bunch of people. Like, I don't like that. You know what I mean? And that's scary. And it sucks because like the small group of those people that are doing that crap, it can kind of like ruin motorsports for the professionals and the people that are being serious about it, because like we kind of get put in a similar basket of like, oh, those racer guys, you know, like I know it's not the same and we're not the same, but like definitely that stuff like gives it a bad image, you know, to where like, you know, you got to be responsible about it. It's like a weapon, you know, like these cars, they're dangerous, you know, some of the stuff and the stunts that people are doing, it's dangerous. You're putting people in danger. You're putting yourself and like bystanders in danger. And like, they may not have signed up for that. They may not know that like, oh, if you get hit by this car, like, you know, obviously you should know if you're in those areas, like, hey, watch your back. But like, I see people getting hit all the time and like, it's
dangerous, just like you said. Yeah.
At least at like tracks, you go
untrained
to track.
people doing it. I'm not saying you got to be trained, but like you got to be in a controlled
environment where like it's got, you know, walls and, you know, it's actually like sort of safe.
Yeah, sort of safe.
Sort of safe. You know, it's not completely safe. It's mostly safe.
Or like there's too many people around. Like when you see them doing it, it's like way too many people. You're gonna hit somebody that you had no idea who that person ever was.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, I mean it's weird. This like day and age, it's weird, but it's kind of cool to see like the technology that like has come from this new generation. You know, it's just these cars are getting so advanced. You know, it's like awesome to see where it's gone compared to like 20 years ago when we were like working with a lot more primitive components, electronics, all that stuff, to where, you know, it was hard building drift cars 20 years ago. You know, nowadays it's like you go online, you're like,
you can buy one real quick. Let me get this. Yeah.
Then you're like, boom, you build a car real quick. You know, you get all the best stuff. You know, it's all available at your fingertips right there. As to where, back in the day, it was definitely hard putting a car together. It was hard getting to events. You know, there just wasn't as many events. Nowadays, you go to events every weekend if you want. You know, there's events. So in some state every weekend, like you could go somewhere and drift next weekend if you wanted to,
which is good. So you keep the racetracks alive. Do you go to car meets at all? Like, did you go to the car meets in the past?
No, I mean I used to like as a kid and stuff, but I don't really go to the car meets and stuff anymore.
How was that experience for you though?
Like, it was cool. Back in the day, it was awesome. You know, you like get excited about it. You know, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to the car meet tomorrow, get your car all clean. You know, get your wheels all shined up. Yeah, it's definitely like a cool experience to get to do that. Now I'm like, I don't really care about it. Go ride my bike or go rock crawling or something.
So what's next for you after FD? Rock crawling, more rock crawling?
No, that's just like recreational. I don't think I'll ever take that to where it's like, you know, competing or anything. It's just fun. I like being outdoors and doing like stuff like that. So I think I'll always, you know, be like tinkering with cars and like be able to like do it for fun. I just don't know like if I'd want to continue doing it at the high level of competition. Yeah.
So are you like retired, doing nothing, relaxing?
No, I'm like building.
You still fabricating?
Building cars for friends here and there. You know, doing family stuff, off-roading, mountain biking.
You feel like it's close?
What?
That time?
Yeah, definitely. Like definitely getting close.
You still figuring it out?
I'm one of the older drivers in Formula Drift, and not that you like have to stop at any certain age, but like, you know, I just feel like it's not as big of a passion as it used to be. I used to like live for it. You know, I'd wake up thinking about it. I'd dream about it. I'd eat, you know, sleep, everything drift. Now it's like, I got a family and I got like different priorities on my mind that I'm thinking about that overweigh like competitive drifting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it comes with everyone with time.
You know? Does, yeah. You always have to find ways to,
right.
It's either that or you got to find ways to re-inspire yourself.
Right. And like, sometimes it happens. You know, I thought maybe 2-3 years ago I was done, and then like got re-inspired and I wanted to come back, and then we made it happen. We came back and struggled a bit the last couple of years with like engine package and like had a bunch of failures and stuff. And that's tough too. And that comes with racing, you know, like nothing lasts forever, but yeah, we had a couple of rough breaks here and there. And that definitely like hurts your drive, you know, like, cause you want to come out to these events, you want to put on a show, and you can't do it because of mechanical failure. That's like a huge letdown. It like just guts you, because you're like, man, like I was ready to like put on a show, and like I was hoping to like, you know, throw down with so-and-so or, you know, whatever, looking forward to this battle. And like, you can't race.
You can't even
So
you're there.
Yeah, you're there. You got to like watch it, and you're like, this guy gets a buy run because like I was supposed to be driving. And that gets really frustrating. So, but that's part of the game. You know, you got to roll with it, the ups and downs of motorsports. It comes with everyone. You see it in F1 and you
Yes.
see it in everywhere, the engine failures, mechanical, wire, electrical.
Yeah, it's never as good as it looks on camera.
Right.
Like behind the scenes, like people have
Super
this perception,
frustrating. You see
but it's
definite like emotions and like heated moments where like people
completely
like
different
there's
world.
so much like time and money and everything riding on it that like it's hard not to get emotional about it.
Yeah.
It's like you can try to be calm and collected, but like obviously like we all want to do well. We want to put on a show for the fans and stuff. And when you don't get to do that, it's like a major letdown.
Yeah, I agree. With Get Nuts, are you proud of where it is now? Like how far it's come?
Like now it's just like my hobby shop, like it in the past it had a lot more going on, but now it's like I got the shop in my backyard and I can like come out and work on cars and as I please and then go
I'm gonna
back
need some
in.
merch. I want some merch.
Yeah. To where it's a small operation. It's like me and my girl and we got a couple friends that come help out here and there, but other than that, I mean it's pretty much it's just a little hobby shop where I get to like maintain my cars and run the home base out of.
Awesome. You'll be at the Slush Motorsports Festival February 8th.
Yep, February 8th we'll be there. Wild Horse, or is it Firebird?
It's Firebird.
Is it Firebird or Wild
Yeah.
Horse? Because it was Wild Horse, it was Firebird.
Yeah, they kept switching it, but now it's Firebird.
Okay, Firebird.
So Firebird Motorsports Park, February 8th. Can anyone get a ride along with you? Will you be offering
we'll do
ride-alongs?
rides. We'll have merch. We'll be out there throwing down some laps.
Get some Get Nuts merch.
Yeah, hopefully getting some tandems in with some of the local drivers. And excited to be out there.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Thank you for doing this podcast with us today.
Of course.
We'll definitely want to do another one in the future. Personally, I think you're one of the coolest FD drivers I've ever met.
Oh, thank you.
Kudos to that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would want to ask. But thank you, Forrest. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If you want to find Forrest, you have Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, just Forrest Wang.
Website?
No, we don't even have a website right now.
Website?
Yeah.
So probably the best platform would be Instagram to catch up with you
Yep.
on. Okay. Yeah, so go ahead, check Forrest Wang out on social media. People shouldn't be afraid to people should not be afraid to reach out to you.
No.
I'm sure he'll have a conversation with you.
Always down to help people out. I get people asking me all the time questions about JZs, questions about S chassis stuff. Definitely always down to help out. And like you said, promote drifting. Keep it going.
And if there's one last piece of advice before we go, you can give any car enthusiast, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh, it's kind of like just more what we talked about earlier. Life's short, and like don't really give up quality of life to get something that may not even be in the cards for you. I get it. Everyone wants to go pro. You want to get paid to go drift, but nowadays it's a really tough market to break into, and it's not for everyone. So, I mean, just stay within your means, keep it fun.
Keep it fun.
Hell yeah.
Keep living your dreams.
Keep drifting fun.
Life is all about good experiences.
Yep.
Get as many good experiences as
Friends,
you can.
family, health. That's the most important priorities you should be looking at.
Yep. I agree. Well, thank you guys for tuning in today. Again, go ahead and hit the link below. Check out our merch and check out Forrest Wang and come to the festival on February 8th. He'll be there. And I'll be getting a ride along for him too.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Thank you.